stuff on the board was. That's been what you've been trying to do, is this multiplication. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about it. We could talk a long time about this. We could talk a long time about it. But again, I'm priming the pump. If you don't know how to do discipleship or mentor, there's a couple of people to study. Jesus and his discipleship.
Yes.
He grabbed these guys, not a very likely looking group, and what did he see in them? Potential. There was diversity of giftings, there was diversity of education, but really the common factor was that he saw some kind of potential in them. Now, he instructed them all of the time. And he had this understanding of when there were times when you could see he was really formally instructing them. They were coming together, they were talking about it. We see that other times he was speaking to the crowd, but he was explaining it privately to them. He released them way too soon. Way too soon, okay? But he didn't release them and leave them out there. They came back, they asked questions, he mentored them, he helped them, he encouraged them. So he understood that, and he allowed them to be a part of his life. And that is one of the strengths, I believe, friends, of the calling and the mission, is the live learn. Remember, I mentioned to you about the 50th anniversary. And people came in from all over. And here you would have some person that is 45 years old. They did a DTS when they were 18. They come running to us, Darla, it's so good to see you. I'm still a YWAMer. Friends, and we maybe had an influence in them for 8 months out of their lives. And that happens all over the world. People that have done one course. It's the same kind of camaraderie of people that went through a 4-year college together. It stays with them. And I believe it's this live, learn. I believe the intensity of our courses, our living together, our thinking about it, our being a part of it. And of course, Jesus' example was like that. So he sent them out, but he also had this debriefing with them. He forgave them easily of their mistakes. So you can go through just, when you're thinking about all of this, we could spend, as I said, much longer just taking the life of Jesus and how he coached and mentored. The other one that is really good to study in this area is Timothy and Paul. And Paul and Timothy. So you see here you have Paul, a more senior person, releasing Timothy. Now, when we're talking about discipling, mentoring, multiplying, we see that Paul shares a lot with Timothy. But we never pick up in reading about that Timothy is a little Paul. He's very individual. He's a separate person. And you guys, it's one of the things I love about YWAM. Is people are all very, very different from one another. There isn't just one kind of person that's a YWAMer, other than that they're radical and crazy. I guess we all have that in common. But it isn't do as I do, and that's what happens if you don't understand the belief tree. You teach people just how to have an action. You don't teach them the understanding of how to do it, because then they can do it a variety of ways and not miss the values. Are you with me? But we see Paul, he's trying to say to him, now, I really believe in you. But he also honors the family relationships. Remember your mom, remember your grandma, remember the elders that laid hands on you. And for us, working in YWAM, we have someone that comes to us maybe that's 18 years old, from an extremely dysfunctional family. I have had young DTS people tell me that Lauren and I are some of the first people in their lives that they know that aren't divorced. They have no family members that aren't divorced. They didn't know a marriage could last that long. And they come to us many times with lots of dysfunction. So the first time they've had a family relationship is within their DTS setting, their small group, their leaders, something comes alive in them in the security of this family. And one of the things we have to be careful about is to remember we are not their family. And what will happen, particularly, this is just one example, but this will probably do it for you. You have a couple that, maybe they're both from dysfunctional families, and they meet in YWAM, fall in love, and want to be married. And they want one of the YWAM leaders to marry them. They want all of the people coming to their wedding to be the staff of the community. That's their family. Guys, they still have grandparents. They still have parents. They still have family relationships. Don't let yourself get caught in that. You have to always remember they too have family relationships. Maybe they're totally dysfunctional, but they're with us for a season, sometimes for a lifetime, but for a season. But their family relationships, no matter how dysfunctional, still go on. And so it's very easy when a family hasn't cared for that child and that we care for them to dismiss them, but it's not honoring. And you have to, don't get caught up in that one. It's an easy one to miss on. But he reminded him, you've got family relationships, and I want you to remember that. So Paul is in a very difficult place. That church is just falling apart and has all kinds of problems in it. And Paul gives him some very specific instructions. He talks to him about the social, he talks to him about physical exercise, he talks to him about the structure of the church. His instructions are very complete. I love the fact that you hardly read 10 verses without him saying, and remember the resurrected Jesus. In other words, Jesus in you will equip you for this. Now, he's not so foolish as in all his belief to Timothy to think that he's not young. So he says, now, I recognize the Spirit of God's in you. You have hands laid on you. There's an authority on you, but you are young. So watch your mouth. Watch your conduct. Watch these things. So he's helping him recognize you are going to be perceived this way, so you have to be more careful. So we sent some young leader who is into, let me give you an example. Nathaniel Baldock, teaching on spheres. Remember the report he gave us for dinner up there? How he was the Cameroon pastors, and here he is, this young man. All right. He was aware, and Jackson, who's leading it, is a young person, and particularly within the African context, that doesn't require that they don't have the respect yet to do that. And I thought Nathaniel was so wise. One of the first illustrations he used was about his own father, because his father was a YWAMer who got a call to go into politics. So he tried to in every way establish, one, that he respected his father, but he was using his father as the authority in order for them to hear him. Because he remembered he was young. Do you see? He didn't back off. He doesn't say, well, I don't have the authority to teach. No, you do have the authority to teach. Because in the Bible, where the culture was, it was the older child that would have the prominent role. The Bible chose Joseph, it chose David, he chose Gideon, he chose, God went right across that cultural thing. So we can walk in authority as young people. There's no question about it. At the same time, he was helping Timothy be very respectful. Understand this. And so we see he mentored Timothy, but always reminding him of who Jesus was in him. And this respect for Jesus in each other. Now there's some stages of mentoring that's probably helpful for us to just talk about. None of this is absolute, okay? But we are talking now on our making principle-based decisions out of values that we have. And again, if I had longer, we would go farther into this, but I'm going to, first of all, and I'm going to try to keep this a little bit to word by heart, okay? But first of all, there's the call. That call, come be a student in word by heart. come, this is what we're doing, and we're trying in every way, guys, to help them call. Jesus called disciples not to just action, he called them to purpose. He called them first to purpose. Paul, when he set up this training team, he started out the first day with the people that talked strongly about purpose, vision, Lauren and David. He didn't bring us on to talk about the actions, the practice of it, till he had established the purpose. So always when you're communicating the call, always keep the purpose before them, the bigger picture. Now, our part of the call, and I did that in a little way. On my first day, I talked about the 4 legacy words. This is what our call is. This is your unique part, word by heart, okay? So the call is very important. But there's also now another way in talking about mentoring, in which I call somebody to come work with me. Paul calls people, come work with me for us to work together so that you can help multiply word by heart. So when we call somebody, we start coaching them. Now, when you're being coached by somebody, they should, and if you're a good coach, you're going to give as much understanding as possible. That's why I said to you, be sure you read those 4 books. It gives understanding. But when we're coaching, we say, now, this is the way we do it. When somebody is first being coached, usually they will do it exactly like you do it. This is the method. But all the time, I'm teaching them and giving them understanding. So later, when they're confident in the method, if they want to do it a bit differently, they won't stray from the real truth of it, right? But first of all, when people are being coached, they copy what you do. And in their minds, they think, okay, this is the way Dar would do this. I'll make a really simple illustration. One of the things that I just always have done has been very involved in hospitality, and I told you I love events. And so I've nearly always had a good, strong team helping me with that. And so you have a young person coming in and say, I'll help you put on these events. I will try to tell them first why we're having the event, what we're doing, but I'll say, I want it done this way. And I really do want it done just like that. I want the table to look like that, and I want that. And later, that person, after they've worked with me, they think, oh, Dar would do it like this, but I understand why. Therefore, I don't have to do it exactly like Dar would. I can now add my touch. And they understand, no longer do they copy that method, but they've been coached, and now they're able to be doing it their way. So then if I've sufficiently coached somebody, the creative end of it, for me, is the fun end. Okay. So the creative end of it is the fun part. Now, that person that I've coached, I want them to use their creativity, which is different than mine. So now I've coached them, I'll support them, but you put on the event. Let me know any way that I can be helpful to you. But you choose the color schemes, you choose this, you now know what the important elements are of that. You can do it in any way that you want. Here's the materials, this is what you could do, this is how you figure out the budget. I know this and this and this, you can't spend more than that, but you create the meal out of that budget. Are you with me? So you've coached, and there's a big difference, guys, in this direct coaching and when you start supporting somebody. You're helping them succeed, but they're taking the rein. You're coming along and you're in this support area. Now, in this support time, here's another example. During the time of the 50th, Lauren and I were gone from the campus for that full year, almost entirely. We had a team of 3 at that time who were taking the leadership of the campus. We weren't here. We went through what those responsibilities were, and they were already had been coached. A lot of that, they could just be supported in. But there were a few of those things we said, we don't want decisions made in these categories. We don't want new policies done without talking to us about that. You can come with recommendation, but we wouldn't like to see a bunch of new policies made that we didn't have some input in, okay? These categories, we want to be kept up on. Otherwise, you go for it, you lead. And so they knew they were supported, but they knew where that direction needed to come from. So you want to be clear as you're giving people. Probably the biggest error Warren and I have made in leadership is this total delegation, going from the call, a little bit of coaching, and delegating, and forgetting this step. Setting them out there too soon on their own. Just let them go. And not making clear, hey, I'll support you in this, or it's okay to do this, or saying, I don't want that decision made. In other words, probably Paul would say during this stage, I would not want you to choose another school leader without running it by me. He said to you early, I want to be aware of who's coming in and teaching. Later on, he probably won't make that same thing. He will probably say, oh, you go ahead, because you now understand. But right now, while this place is being formed, and you guys, he cannot give that up yet. 2 quarters with the wrong teachers, and the school adrift. Just, it happens so fast. So don't think that he's being overly controlling. This is the most important thing. I'm just amazed how quickly things can move because of our quarter system and the way we are. We have some things we have to hang on to longer than what maybe people would think we should. But the content pieces and who's giving them, because it's just not technical advice you're getting. There's a spirit that's being passed on. And sometimes if he says to you, oh, I think maybe I would choose this person rather than that person. Don't put him on the spot and make him give you all the reasons why. Just trust him, okay? Just trust him. And so that's going to be probably one of the last things that he delegates. He'll hang on to that longer than some of you will think he should. My gosh, we had these same speakers over and over again, they're already been approved and so on. He knows things that you don't know. He also knows where there's, oh, yes, this person can speak on this so well, but this new speaker's coming along and will bring new life both to you and your students. So let's do that. So please know that is probably one of the most important things. So then we're support. Then we delegate and we say, okay, this is yours, go for it. You can, in this delegation, you need to have a full understanding of, are there things still? Because you are a unit. So I may fully delegate to you, but say to you, within this delegation, we have 2 staff gatherings a year. You do not have the freedom not to attend those. You have the delegated authority for that, but when we're all coming back together at these times for checking out alignment, hearing from God together, as long as you're a part of this, there are a few requirements. That doesn't mean he hasn't given you full authority. It means we're having reasons why we still connect together. All right? Can we stop there for a minute? Any comments? Yeah.
Yeah, maybe you want to say something about this. I find it always, I was taught, and also I found it really frustrating myself too when people delegate things to me and then they try to come back in the coaching and support role. It's extremely frustrating.
Yes, okay. You have to understand what level of delegation, where are you? See, in that person's mind, they were still supporting you. You didn't have full delegation.
Mm-hmm.
They said the job was yours, but they still, and you understood it to be all mine.
Yeah.
They understood that they know more about it than you do. And so they want to be able, so that, when you're at this stage, this is where there can be real misunderstanding. So what you would be wise to say, now what is now that this is my role, what is it that you would like for me to come back to you and talk to you about?
Okay.
Where would that be, that you would want me to do it? And what a wise person recognizes, you do not have to do it the way I do it. But you have to be able to tell me why it supports the values and beliefs. But the methods can be different. The methods can be different. So some of us, in like my generation, but you're in young David, and you're gonna use the slingshot. And I have all this experience, and I was successful. So I asked you to put on my armor, but you can't walk in it. It wasn't made for you, it was made for me. And so that can be really tough. But I think if we talk more about this, when somebody delegates something to you, okay, Paul, you've given me this leadership over this region, of what is it the outcome? What is it that you want to do? What things do you want to be a part of? And when somebody's led something, they see a whole lot in it that you don't see. And where there has to be self-control on the leader's point is to say, is this my preferred method? Or is there more than one way to do this? Are they doing it fine? It just isn't the way I would do that. And that takes self-control on the leader's mind. All right?
Yes, so if I'm understanding, so if, there's two sides of this. If I was the one to delegate something over someone,
Yeah,
we just say, just clearly define that and communicate that.
yes,
And then also, if I was the one being delegated and I found
Ask
myself
questions.
frustrating, asking the right questions
Yes.
to get clarity.
yes.
Yeah, okay.
And you have to also, you have to remember that a lot of times, one of the things that's always difficult for Lauren, all right, because of his position. If he walks around and he sees something, he's just making a suggestion. He's not saying this is a directive, but everybody comes back, oh, Lauren wasn't happy with this, he wants us to do it this way. No, and I'll say to him, how come you told them to do it? He said, I didn't tell him, I just made a suggestion, I thought, well, there's another way to think about this. And so that's, that's where we have to have so much self-control, and I think a lot when I say something to somebody who I'm helping move into this more support delegative role and saying, hey, I've been pondering this, or I've been thinking about this, rather than I think this is really important. And so you talk about that and it'll help.
Yeah.
Not perfect, but it'll help, make that clear. Okay, this is another way, okay, so here we are in delegation. And this is where you make it really clear. This is another way to talk about coaching a management. You have the calling stage. You have, which is the same as the mentoring, the coach. And I think there's also, guys, with mentoring, there are friendship relationships and there are mentoring relationships, all right? Friendships go on forever and ever. Mentoring relationships don't go on forever and ever. So you can sometimes get that mixed up. So here we have this mentoring time, which is somewhat what I've talked to you about here, but this is the one I want to talk about, is the broadening effect. If I'm going to mentor you, remember we have been called to be international, interdenominational, blah, 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 blah. We have all kinds of variety of types of leaders, ministries, and so on. If I want to invest in you, I want this broadening effort. I want you to go to an international gathering with me. And when I take you to that international gathering, I want to pass on loyalty, okay? I want to have you meet people. I want people to meet you. I'm broadening, I'm passing on all the loyalty that I have to people by saying, here, this is this person and this person. It's part of what I'm doing all of the time. I'm wanting to make connections for people, and you're looking to broaden that person. Back again to that very young DTS person that I mentioned. I may have, as their mentor, been such an important person in their lives. I might be the first person that's ever believed in them. I might have helped come alive in them something that's never come alive before. Hey, I'm not supposed to be the only person in their life. So I want to have them meet Barnabas. I want them to have them meet Paul. I want them to have them meet Silas. I'm looking to broaden their effect because in truth, I've got some strengths, but I've also got some downsides. And they won't be as broad if we don't broaden them. So you want to be intentional with that. And this passing on loyalty is so, so important. Relationships that I have, I want to share. I try to be very, very intentional about that. We have visiting speakers that come here. They can't meet every single leader in the place, but I try to think, okay, where is this passing on loyalty between these two people important for kingdom business? So this is really important. Then this last stage, this appreciation stage, this delegation stage. In the early years of the mission, I did a lot of mentoring of our young leaders. Was very, very involved in all four of these categories. For some people, it was really important for me to literally say to them, I have loved this time we've had together. I can affirm the leadership in you. I see who you are. I want you to know I have full confidence in your leadership. And it's important, particularly if somebody you've mentored a lot or you're giving strong leadership together, that they don't have the feeling that I wonder what Darlene's really thinking about this. I wonder what Lauren's really thinking about. Would this be the kind of thing that they would want me to do? Are you with me? It's the positive and the negative of a relationship. So I have to be clear, hey, this is what we're doing. Paul's now a part of a team of 4 or 5, and it's going to grow core leadership team. And Paul made it clear when and we did too when we were sharing this with our staff, that we were working alongside with one another. But in every way we are showing that we appreciate their leadership. They have delegated authority. We are not abandoning them, they are not abandoning us, but it's a little different season, and we're trying in the best vocabulary we can to do that. So there comes a time where this is very important, and in some cultures more than others, friends, that they understand, okay, now you have delegated authority. All but this couple of categories I still want to be involved in, or now it's your time to multiply. And I want you to know that. You don't have to come back and ask me any of those things again. This is now time for you. All right? That's a few thousand words. Is that helpful to you, or anything you want to add? Okay. Now more papers. Okay. Anything more you want to say?
Maybe just to put it out there, because we are moving very quickly, in some ways with LightHub. So yeah, we're moving very quick. We had 1 school, and then 2014 2 schools. Last year 8 schools. Next year maybe up to 23 schools, right? So we are. I've delegated the authority of leading these schools to the people that are more or less up on the board, right? So you have to go out there now and lead it. But so in some ways, I have shot you out there, but I also want to have the connection, right?
Yeah.
Because we're still very much developing it.
Yes.
But I also can't cover 20 schools in 1 year, right? And so So of us, Rutanea, of us, Paul, of us, Christina, to also be sort of like a coach as people that have sort of gone on, and Jackson, of course, right? They've been walking with me now since 2000, the second school, really. And so the idea of they're gonna also helping me to coach and support as well. You see how that works? So just because of the nature of wanting to go into all the world and multiply the kingdom through word by heart, right? It is delegated, and I trust in your leadership, but also that we do want to support and to coach and to be there as well when there are things. So just this is kind of a snapshot season. I think we're going to move quickly. I believe probably 2019 we'll have about 100 schools running. We continue to grow at this pace, and then we will, by virtue of supporting that and enabling that to occur, there'll be more requirements on you to help spot the leaders, coach them through, then delegate them responsibilities. So this is not just me here, okay? This is actually, I'm looking for you as you develop and grow to actually start moving into this area, into this sphere as well. So
What might be helpful to them, Paul, is in this delegation of the people, even like you said right now, that you can say, these are all the areas that are delegated to you, but these are not.
okay.
This I want to know, and to me, I mean, I don't know what you want, but to me, it would be the multiplication of the schools and who's leading it.
Yes.
That you should be included in that. And as a team, you should be able to pray into that, because that's new seed being planted, and it needs a special covering. And so you could think about that, but that might be a healthy discussion for you.
Yeah, definitely.
It might be a healthy discussion.
Because then for that, maybe an example would be that if I'm thinking about really seeing a leader here in the
Yes.
school and how am I developing and coaching them, and then Paul would know, and then we get and then he can say, I'll trust your decision
That's
and
right.
go for it, and or not, or we can talk about and see how we can train up that person.
Exactly.
To put it out there, my bottom line concern isn't that we release people too quickly. It's that we don't see who's actually in the class who can step out and lead.
That's right.
Does that make sense? Like, honestly, if someone is coming to learn the gospel by heart, the heart's going to be in the right place, more or less, right? Someone might have a bit more hang-ups and some have more capacity, but seriously, like, just wanting to do this school, people are serious about knowing Jesus, right? We have that going for us. So if somebody shows a competency, they enjoy this work, they chase you out. That's exactly where Ryan came to my attention, right? He said, Paul, I want to sit and talk with you. I'm like, all right, let's have coffee, And then he basically, just said, I want to run with this. And I'm like, well, I want you to run with it too, right? And particularly if they're showing that they want to run with it. But you'll also have, depending on culture, have people there that have capacity, competency, and character to match it. But they won't have the initiative like Ryan has, but they have it all there. But you draw them out. So I don't know. My bottom line thing is that we really see who the Lord has brought to us, and don't put up a massive high standard that actually we could never attain, getting moving in the initial stages of this, right? Because once we do that, they have to run through this and run through that and run through this and run through that and run through the other, and then all of a sudden they've gotten bored, and it's like, I want to do something else, because it's like my wife, she uses German metaphors. They're always chasing the sausage, right? Like, the sausage is always kind of out there.
Wow.
Yeah, the bratwurst is always there. So, that is, the Lord has given us a gift, but bottom line, it's pretty simple.
Yeah, that's true.
It has an amazing impact on people, but it's not rocket science. My 10-year-old Hi, Levi.
Hi.
You're the 10-year-old.
You don't feel like it? You want to lie down?
I'm a little sick.
Really? I'll be with you in a second.
How are you?
Okay, I'll follow up on him. He can do it. And you know what? He says to me 2 days ago, Daddy, I want to lead a word by heart school when I'm 12. I think I want to fly here in Cambodia. And I'm like, well, do you want Mom and Dad to go with you? He's like, no, I think I can handle it. So, you know, but you know what? Honestly, if he would continue walking with us, he could.
Yeah.
That's true.
He needs a little deepening with the first step, and we all need that, right?
Yeah.
And need some deepening with the fourth step, we all need that. He actually could teach it. It's not rocket science, right? So, but it has a massive impact. So it's a gift. So anyway, I'll sit my piece.
Okay.
No marks.
More papers.
Yes.
All right.
It has its visual effect.
What I'm passing out here, I'm just going to tell you a little bit of a story. This is a Bible study on how we communicate one with another. Because no matter what you're doing, we have to communicate. And it's the Bible is, all right? And I want to tell you how this came to be, and then it's just for your own personal study. I'm not going to have time to speak on communication. Lauren and I, first 5 years of the Youth Commission, we're living out in the back of the van. We're calling young people to come go with us, and to everybody's astonishment, they do. We have 3 days of instruction, and then we go out for the summer or out for a weekend. And I always tell people the reason we had 3 days is that's all we knew. We couldn't have taught a fourth day. We told everything we knew in 3 days. But in that 5th year, Warren and I are driving down the freeway, and he said to me, he said, Dar, what do you think's wrong with my leadership? I said, what do you mean? I said, I'm a pretty good leader. He said, well, we're seeing addition, but we're not seeing multiplication. And so we pondered that. Now, I've already shared with you the nature of our gifts is that we work really well together. Lauren is this visionary, the big picture, and I take it, and I always tell him I do all the work. But I take that and try to help other people see how to do it. So our teamship works well, and in those first 5 years, by choice, we didn't have any children, we looked in each other's pockets, and went. So this is now this conversation. And Lauren's getting ready to go down to New Zealand. And he's speaking in this church, and when he's speaking and he talks about going to New Zealand, I felt like God said to me, don't go. Well, there was no reason for me not to go. I always went. So when he came home from that service, I said, I had this funny impression. I think I'm not supposed to go to New Zealand. And he said, I don't know why, Dar, but he said, I think the same thing. Now, please remember, this is the day before email, fax, cell phones. We had never been separated. This would have been a 5-week separation, which is huge to us. And you only made a toll phone call, you know, if somebody was dying, literally, because it was so expensive. So Lauren heads down for New Zealand. I'm staying back, I'm a nurse, and so I would work sometimes to take on a job at night, which I decided to do during that time while he was gone. And I'm reading about revival. And I like to read, and I was reading in bed, and I don't know why I pulled the sheets up over my head, and I just said, God, will I ever see revival? Is it always going to be hundreds of years ago, or tens of thousands of miles away? Will I ever see it? And God said to me, you can see revival when I can trust you with truth. I don't know if you've ever had the experience where you're just sure God's got the wrong phone line. I explained to him how absolutely truthful I am, how it was a high value for And God popped a DVD, well, in those days, I think it would have been a cassette in my head. And I began to see all the places where I was not careful with detail. How many people were there? Oh, maybe 30, actually it was 22. Always making it bigger than what it was. And I saw all the places that I exaggerated. And then God's used a little book by Watchman Nee, Service Unto the House of the Lord, or Service unto the Lord Himself. And I begin to see how much my service was for the house or for Lauren and Darlene, making sure we got it. I didn't hear a message, guys, on soul surgery or anything else. But for several weeks, I literally could hardly get off my face before the Lord as God was doing soul surgery on me. Lauren is half a world away. And he's dealt with me, by the way, a great deal about my mouth. The Bible says if you're going to lead, you've got to strict your standard for speech. Lauren's half a world away. He's gone to New Zealand. He knows one person. His name is David Ravenhill. He's an 18-year-old kid. When he gets there, so he finds out where David was living. And they say, oh, David's not here. He is out at a Christian camp called the Marama. So Lauren went out to that camp. Now the leaders of this Christian camp were Joy and Jim Dawson, Ken Wright, many people like that are well-known names in mission. The students were Rihanna Peterson, Winky Pratney, Ross Tooley. They were like 18, 19-year-olds, and some of those are well-known names to some of you. So Lauren comes to the camp. Joy and Jim and this group of leaders, it was their custom to pray together over who would be speaking that day, and just seeking the Lord in detail. This particular morning, none of them had gotten who should speak. But one of them had a scripture that God gave him and said, a man from the north will be coming. Lauren comes walking in. They say to him, now literally, they don't know him. They say to him, are you a man that hears from God and speaks? And he said, well, yes. They said, well, we think you're our speaker today. And God used him in a remarkable way that week. But in this week where I'm on my face before the Lord, Lauren's on his face before the Lord, down in the basement of Jim and Joyce Dawson's house. He was supposed to be going around churches in New Zealand to recruit for a big outreach in Tonga. God said, you spend time with me and I'll spend time getting the students for you to go. When Lauren and I later compared notes, friends, we had been dealt by God about the same things at the same time. Now what I did, and that's where these scriptures came from all those years ago. I told you I wish I could tell you I do it perfectly now. But because I am a nurse, I often see things medically. So I began to do a Bible study on communication, God's standard for communication. And I would write these, I wrote these on 3x5 cards. And in the morning, I would take my medicine and have 3 or 4 scriptures. And then at lunchtime, I'd take another 3 or 4. And then at supper time, I'd take another 3 or 4. And I'd meditate on them. And for many years in my cupboard where I kept the salt and the honey and so on, Darlene, remember, your speech is to be sweet like honey. Let your heart teach your mouth how to speak. May your speech be with grace, like salt, giving grace to the hearers. And I made as much as I can. And again, please don't think I think I'm perfect on this. I'm not. But I know what God's standard is, friends. And I would just encourage you that all of our life is about communication. And part of what your calling is, in doing Word by Heart, you are communicating the Word. It's a gift of communication that you use. Well, maybe if that is the case, the standard of personal communication for you should be high. Would that not give you more authority? So this is just my personal reflections and scriptures about, if we were going to teach on communication, I'd do a whole lot more on this. But I just thought, well, I would let you at least have it for yourself. And let's have that standard of communication so that whenever you communicate, when you teach communication of God's word, there is a greater authority on it. I think I mentioned this, but how a man of God warned us that there was going to be persecution. And I felt like if we don't have proper communication amongst ourselves, where will be our authority to stand against that if we do gossip and slander? And this is the same kind of thing. I think it ups your authority to have made a commitment for righteous communication to come out of your mouth. Amen?
Amen.
Okay. Now, Paul, I need your input to know if I should even pass these out. This is all about giving and receiving correction.
Oh, yes.
Yes,
Yes, we do.
Okay.
we need it.
You need.
Okay,
I
here's
need
the
it.
scriptures.
Yeah.
All right. I
know how to
can,
receive.
we
I
don't
don't
have
know how
enough
to
time,
give.
guys, for us to teach in detail. And please know, I'm going to then, those are the scriptures. This is teaching that I'm gonna pass out next. Guidelines for giving and receiving correction. All these principles will apply to you speaking within a group context, to whatever you're doing. But you'll see that some of these are with some of our great matters that we have to take care of. But all the principles, I believe, will be helpful to you as well, all right? So there's your scriptures for why we do it. And here is, I'm hoping without the teaching this is gonna make sense. Let me just look and see if there's anything that might be.
No, one is scripture, one is guidelines.
One scripture is one of the guidelines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Probably, guys. And for you, probably, the number 8, 9, and 10 would be the only things that maybe you would be involved with. Otherwise, all of it will apply to a smaller offense. What those refer to, let's say there is a leader who was caught in an immoral relationship or embezzling or some great matter, then those steps are very much involved. That would probably not be when you're just talking about going to someone for a small matter, all right? But I think everything else would apply.
Sorry, on which one are we now, the guidelines? The guidelines.
For the guidelines, if you just take a look of that, I think if we look through that. This, if you will, elements to consider in arbitration, if you would look at that. Again, remember this is written for leaders at a different level than what we're talking about, but the principle is still right. Many times there can be something that happens, and it's really because there wasn't clarity. So when there's a little matter that happens, so for instance, I come out, we're gonna have a love feast. It's now 6 o'clock, the love feast is at 7, and the chairs and tables aren't set up, the place it's not ready. And the temptation then is to find the person that that was responsible and say, what in the world's happening? Da, 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 da. That is not the time to put that kind of weight on somebody. You say, obviously, I didn't make something clear right now. How can we help? Let's get together. Let's figure out what the plan is. Let's call these people. Let's get it set up. You take full responsibility at that time and say, we're going to get this worked out, and you help make it happen. Later, when the feast has all been successful and so on, you can debrief and say, wow, I thought I made it clear. And the person says, yes, you did make it clear. I forgot. But you don't start out with that accusation, and when something isn't working out, don't pounce on somebody right then. That is not what's needed. What's needed is an answer with a cheerful attitude, and then take care of that. So when we're talking about that, about taking on the blame yourself, because in many cases that's the truth. It can be perfectly clear to me, and I haven't made it clear to you. And so I just want you to look at that carefully, knowing that it was designed for a different kind of working with problems where people have a great deal of influence. But at the same time, I think most of the principles would be there. All right, I think that's it.
Great.
Oh, no.
Sir, we can talk more about that, but I think it will be at least helpful to you.
Wonderful, wow. Thank you so much, Dar. Do you have till 12? Or
I do, but I do have to be out the door at 12.
At the door 12. Okay, so are there any questions that you have for Dar in terms of the content that we've covered this morning? This process of delegation, giving and receiving correction, we just briefly covered. But where are we at? Yeah. Any questions that we could?
I know we're gonna get some form of compile PDF, but is there any audio, video in terms of some of these teachings gathered somewhere? Yeah, okay.
We have some here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Linda?
I noticed on the leadership potential questionnaire, it says 104, but I only got 3 pages.
Oh, I had one extra page, and I thought somebody's gonna have missed it. I'll find that for you.
Okay.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Okay, it's-
She eliminated. Maybe it
I
wasn't.
thought maybe it was a
necessary,
blank
but-
page for
No,
people's notes.
no. Did anybody else miss?
Yeah.
It was
She's
just
talking
three.
about the
I have
potential
the 3 pages.
questionnaire, yeah.
Pardon? Is there
Yeah,
3?
I have
Okay, let me just see how many questions you have. Oh, no, that's it.
it has all the questions.
60. Yeah,
So you just at the bottom. it
yeah,
says-
yeah, no, there was a cover sheet.
Okay,
So it has
BJ.
3.
Yeah.
You mentioned a book that I'm curious about, Service Under the House of the Lord,
Oh, it was
or
by Service Unto the Lord himself. It's a very old book by Watchman Nee.
Service
Wonderful
Unto the
little
Lord,
book. Service Unto the House of the Lord,
House of the Lord.
or Service Unto the Lord himself.
Anyone else?
I'm gonna just share something that just happened out here at the end of break. Vincent invited this lady to come to Mino. She brought on vacation from Japan. And somehow she ended up staying here on the base on her vacation somehow. Anyway, she was sitting out there crying. And so I told her, they were tears of joy, overwhelmed. Somehow sitting in on the Word by Heart class this morning really touched her, and I'm thinking we need to pray for her. I've exchanged email and information with her to keep track. And she lives in Tokyo, and I think Peter Chung is there working in a church cell, trying to get connected, yeah. But I think maybe it would be kind of cool if even at lunchtime, somebody could come around her and love on her and maybe pray for her. Obviously, she
She had
was
something
just totally
touched her
overwhelmed and
spirit.
something
That's
happened this
great.
morning.
That's great.
Can I just say one thing in terms of, we're talking about values and DNA? That's our value of hospitality. You know, we have all manner of people coming in, sitting in,
That's right.
taking some piece. I think through all of our schools, it's not a closed thing, but it's an open door.
Yeah.
And
And everybody had left and she was just sitting up there crying, so I was the last one doing the stuff that, so, yeah. God
So,
gave it
but
away.
wherever we go, you know, because the
Yeah.
tendency is second level school, am I allowed to come in or not? You're welcome, you know,
That's right.
you know.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Maybe it's gonna be the beginnings of a word by heart in Japan.
That's right.
Yeah, I know, Mr. Olson here said, I remember him sitting here, I think, from the back row. You came for 2 days, 1 or 2 days? You came for 2 days, I think. And that was at the invitation of Sid here, and see what's come about. Oh, Sid and Linda themselves came for 1 week. So hospitality is key. Yeah. Is there anything else?
There's a clarification thing I meant to do whenever I last taught you. I gave an illustration, you remember when I was talking about cultures and understanding, and I said Young Shin's name? I wanted to make sure that you knew I wasn't violating some kind of trust in conversation. She publicly speaks about that, and I should have told you that, because normally you wouldn't give somebody's name for that, but she tells it publicly herself. That was not good modeling.
Thanks, Star. Okay, so anyone else?
I have it, for me, it's still something new to, to coach people, to really support people. And sometimes we need to measure how much the staff would like to be coached, And it's still a process for me to see how much he would like to be taught, how much they would like to be coached, It's really something that we need to measure. It's something is like step in the eggs, yeah. And I have seen, for me, I always see so much potential in people. Sometimes I see this is my big mistake, because I don't matter how these people can make a mess, during the time of leadership, in the team. I see just the potential sometimes. And sometimes it's people who really give a lot of work.
Yes, I understand that. I understand.
Big people who really have a lot of potential is people who give a lot of work.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
And this is one of the challenges I ask God, give me wisdom to see the measure, how much, and how many potential people I can have in my team,
Yes, exactly.
Because otherwise it's too much for
That's
I
right.
to work, in the same time and coach many people in the same time who is huge potential, but really.
Yes, and that's a
challenge.
very insightful comment. That's a very insightful comment, because there's a couple of things here.
Yeah.
If you have in your staff team too many people that need high levels of coaching, your entire time is coaching or discipling that small group. And you miss seeing these students who need a coaching.
Yeah.
Because your eyes are all on this. This is one of the things that we talk a lot with our DTS staff about. That they're so busy, a school leader is so busy extracting the potential of leadership out of the staff, that there's nobody looking, and they're also new, tried out their own gift. They're not looking for giftings within the classroom, and we can miss some very big ones.
Yeah.
So that percentage is, that's a very astute comment. That's an important one for multiplication.
Yeah.
All right, can you just pray a blessing on us?
Oh, absolutely,
And,
my joy. We feel like such a privileged people that you would call us to be people of the Word, your Word, to be able to share that Word, to meditate on it, to provoke people's thinking, to bring light, wisdom. And so, as this group has come together in order to better understand our values, our vision, to strengthen relationships for the tasks that you've called us to do. I pray for a great measure of creativity. I pray, Father, for the ability, like you did, Jesus, to see people. I pray that this group will be the kind of people who would see a Zacchaeus sitting up in the tree, who didn't look like a likely disciple, who will understand what it is to sit and talk with the woman at the well, who will call one brother, and that brother will call his brother, and who will see how to call people forward for multiplication. And Lord, we want to have multiplication that lasts. We want seeds planted that where there's understanding. When we see the parable of the sower, we know that it was where there was understanding that there was great fruitfulness. So I ask for that now, Lord, that in these days when they've come together for more understanding, I just ask that you will bless each person. I ask now, Father, would you bless them in their abilities?
Yes.
Would you bless them in their financial resources?
Yes.
Will you bless them in their health? I ask, Father, for blessings to their families, blessings to their friendships and relationships, blessings to the campuses, base ministries where they've supported. And I would ask, Lord, that you give us all eyes to see things in the way that you do. And we are so grateful, Father, for your call. We just feel like we're the most privileged people around. We're so honored to be in the presence of one another. And to be able to be people that carry this seed. And I do want to ask, Lord, now in this season of multiplication, that you will help Paul and the leadership to understand where the ground is really fruitful right now.
Yeah.
Where the ground is ready for the seed. And there can be a good harvest. There are some places where the ground is not quite yet prepared.
Yes.
And but where there's a fruitful harvest field ready for us, we ask, Lord, you'd help us to start there. We do have to go to some of the hard places too. But I believe at this season, it's where the harvest is really ready.
Yes.
So give understanding. Give understanding for that, in Jesus' name.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Thank you so
Doug.
Then I
much.
joy.
Yeah, thank you.